Hello, MotoAmerica fans. It's time for another episode of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you may even learn something from this unlikely pair and their special guest. The mic is yours, Paul and Sean.
Hello, MotoAmerica fans, and welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. I am Bice, and I'm in Central Ohio, very sunny but very chilly Central Ohio. And as always, Paul, except when we're at the track, is over in sunny Southern California. Paul Carruthers is our communications manager. Paul, how are things going? I assume it's sunny?
No, it's miserable. I looked out the window this morning and I'm like, am I in Ohio? There's no sign of sun. Monday when I got home from Road Atlanta, it was beautiful. I mean, like stunning, like 80 degrees, out, not a cloud in the sky. Then it's got continually worse. And today it's there's no sun, and it looks like it could rain, even though it's not supposed to. But it's it's not so nice. I think we swapped places without knowing it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe it. I was surprised how nice it is here, although it is pretty cold. We had some frost last night, but anyway, I mean, people know we always have to discuss the weather, just because it seems like even though we're both in the United States of America, we're at almost opposite poles sometimes when it comes to temperature and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, we're coming off a great weekend at Road Atlanta. I mean, we had five, but we had six races on Saturday when you count that three lap Mission King of the Baggers challenge. So we had six on Saturday, six on Sunday. We had Hooligan, we had Baggers, we had Stock 1000 Twins Cup, Super Sport, Junior Cup, Superbike. Did I leave anything out? I wasn't counting with my fingers or toes.
I don't think so.
Okay, but it was one right after another. And I mean, it's crazy when it starts. We get in there on Thursday, Paul, and it's always interesting. We try to do a podcast there, and we go around and talk to the teams. But man, once we get fired up, even with practice on Friday, but certainly Saturday and Sunday, once that racing starts, it goes so quick, and we are just so engaged in it with press conferences and then the reports that we do afterwards. I mean, it's just nonstop, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was kind of nice this year. We kind of got eased into it with Daytona just having two classes. Actually three, I think. But anyway, it was a lot less. And then we went to COTA and just had Superbike. So we kind of got a little spoiled there with COTA, because there wasn't a whole lot going on as far as what we had going with just the one class. There was obviously a lot of MotoGP stuff that was cool to keep up with and watch with, especially with our Americans in Moto2 now. So when we get to Road Atlanta, man, there's except for the Royal Enfield girls, we would have had a full slate. So we're going to see those guys down the road a little bit. But yeah, it was hectic, but I enjoy it. I mean, it's, I don't know. I'm kind of addicted to motorcycle racing. So it's the more the merrier. It just ends up being a bit more work, but it's always nice to watch the races. And fortunately our races are always so good. It's always exciting, and it's never boring. So,
I haven't even asked you this, Paul, but I mean, we made a point that in that Stock 1000, they only had the one race past weekend, and it was a 0.001. So it was 1/1000th of a second, which is technically a millisecond. We've had closer races than that, haven't we?
I don't think we can't get closer than that.
Well, that's true, but
I think probably all photo finishes end up being 0.001.
Yeah, that's what it is, because it was like a wheel. It was by a wheel, literally. But it seems like we've even had them closer than that, I guess. So,
well, not even a wheel. It's like the rim of the tire on the rim.
That's true.
But it's very close, and I mean those kind of finishers are really cool, and that one especially because. Right away there was there was like a little hesitation while they were trying to look at the photo finish to see who actually won, because they crossed the line with identical times. So we had to wait a little bit, and that just built the anticipation even more. But man, what a race.
It really was a good race. And so Junior Cup was close too. It's interesting this season. We haven't had a lot of other makes. Yamaha was in it last year, but now it's gotten to the point where they're all Kawasaki. So it's like a spec class now for Kawasaki, just because that bike has proven to be so good over the years. So with all those riders on the same motorcycle, it's kind of almost like a spec class, the way KTM Junior Cup was, or I'm sorry, yeah, the KTM RC Cup was a few years ago. And it's kind of all one make. It's not intended to necessarily be that way, but it's worked out, and it's made for some really close racing in that class too. And we've got our guest today is Kayla Yaakov, who's from Biglerville, Pennsylvania, and I know it to be Gettysburg. She can tell us about the difference between those two. I think they're pretty much the same. And Kayla turned 14 on June 24th, turns 15 on June 24th this year, but she turned 14 last year on June 24th. And on June 25th, she raced in her first race at Ridge Motorsports Park out in the Pacific Northwest. So she hasn't even been racing with us for an entire year, but she's done a lot in her career so far. She's raced in the R3 European Cup. She's done a lot of WERA racing, and she's a very accomplished racer in and of herself. We wanted to have her on for a couple reasons. And, it's funny, I did my duly noted column after this last round, which I'm going to be doing after every round, that kind of calls out some of the interesting things that I personally saw or witnessed, or things that are notable over the weekend. And a couple of fans had accused me of it being clickbait because I didn't mention some of the things that happened at the race. And, we're going to acknowledge the fact that right now that, Kayla was involved in that situation on Sunday that resulted in her getting on the podium with a third place finish. But we're going to kind of move on from that. We're not going to say a lot about it because enough's been said already. And in the idea of duly noted, we feel like it's been duly noted, and we're not going to grill her about how she felt about that decision. It was obviously emotional for her. It would be emotional for any rider. So, but it did for people. A lot of people know who Kayla is, but now it's even more people know about her. And we thought it was a good chance to have her on and kind of talk about her career as she moves on and approaches a full year in our series. And she's one of the front runners already. I mean, she was fourth she was on the podium in the second to the last race at Barber last year. And she finished fourth in Saturday's race. And I want to talk to her a little bit about this. We can both discuss this, but she obviously had a stronger package going on Sunday, I guess. But she's obviously going to be one of the front runners and qualifies really well. So my gosh, Kayla, I went on forever. I'm so sorry. I mean, I hope, did I bore the heck out of you or what? You're still
She laughed, Sean. She already went home.
She's had it with us. I don't blame her. No, Kayla, come on in and talk to us. You still there?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, Atlanta was a good weekend for us overall. I think, last year it was a big difference because last year was my first year ever racing professionally. And, and everything I've done before has just been, club racing and things like that. So, to come into MotoAmerica as well as, the Blue Crew Championship, it was definitely a big difference. And the biggest thing that we were struggling with last year was qualifying. And, it was cool to see that we improved on that by a lot. And then obviously in Q2, we improved a lot, but our Q2 wasn't, as good either. But, going into the race, we knew that from last year we had decent race pace, and I felt like I had good pace all weekend. So, like I said, just to be in that front group was amazing. And it was something that we worked so hard for over the off season. And, I can't give enough credit to the Altus Motorsports team for definitely getting me comfortable on the bike and just to that position where I felt, one with the bike and able to perform where I've always thought I've been able to perform.
All right, let's back up a little bit because I don't know it myself, so I'm sure several listeners don't know it either. But why don't you tell us a little bit how you became a motorcycle racer? I think you started at 9, which isn't entirely that young in this day and age. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how this all came about?
So I think what you're thinking of is when I started road racing. I started road racing at 7.
Okay.
But I started racing motorcycles at about 3.5. Yeah, I started doing flat track at 3.5, and I eventually got into motocross at probably about 5 or 6, and then road racing at 7. And a lot of people know, but my dad raced for 15 years, and it was always something that I wanted to do when I was younger. So he got me a bike. We went out to a flat track race, and he turned to me. He was like, "Do you really want to do this?" And I was like, "Yes." So we kind of went from there, and then we got to a point where we were doing all 3, flat track, motocross, and road racing, and that's kind of where we had to make that decision, because obviously Dad wouldn't be as happy if we were doing all 3 at the same time. So I picked road racing, and it's kind of gone our way, I'd say. I think it was a pretty good decision. But yeah, I started racing at about 3.5. I actually did go-karts first, but I didn't like it as much. So then we went into racing motorcycles, but it's gone pretty good.
Well, just to let you know, Sean was still wearing diapers at 3.5, so you're ahead of him.
Yeah. There's no way I went anywhere near a motorcycle at that time. But Kayla, I remember seeing you on social media and reading about you, and you can tell us about this, but you have a track right at your house. Am I right? And it's paved, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
How is that possible? I mean, how long is it? Is it like a turn track, like an actual road course? And is it just on your land? And how did that come to happen?
So yeah, my when my mom and dad were looking for a property when I was younger, my dad always wanted, a track. He always wanted something that was close, because living kind of in our part of Pennsylvania, we don't have a lot of tracks near us. And I think the closest track is at least 2 or 3 hours away, which isn't bad, but that's only 1 or 2 tracks that I can really think of. But he always dreamed of having a road course around his house, and so we got a property with enough land to do it, and I think it's about a half mile, and depending on the configuration you want to do, because we have a few crossover roads that you can use. The track that I usually did is like about 9 corners. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool. I ride my Supermoto on it a lot. And I used to ride my old 150R on it. I crashed that thing so many times. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. The only thing about, living in Pennsylvania is we live in Pennsylvania, and there. And even right now, the weather's super bipolar. I mean, we'll get one day is like 80 degrees, and then the next day it's like 52, and then it's like, okay, well, this isn't very fun. And yeah, I mean, we get rain a lot, and then obviously in the winters we get snow. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool. And my dad, I think he told me he only rode the track like 3 or 4 times. And, now I'm riding it a lot, and I think I've been putting it to good use.
It's funny. You'll appreciate this. When we moved to Ohio several years ago, the road that goes between where we live east of Columbus and Columbus, where I used to commute to, along the way, there was basically it was like a bunch of farmland that somebody bought and turned into a golf course. And at the time, we knew that the highway that went between Columbus and Granville, where I live, was going to be turned into like more of a, not really an interstate, but a 4-lane deal, 2 lanes on either side. So I knew that they were going to take some of that land where this golf course was being built. So I thought it was really odd that somebody built a golf course that we knew was probably not going to last more than a couple of years. And it almost felt like they tried to raise the value of the land in order to, when they sold it, because they actually had a business there. But let me get to the point. that when I would go by where that golf course was, they had a paved kart track there, and it went all over these hills and all around. And when they closed the golf course, I thought, oh my God, that would be so cool. It's almost like it's all this circuitous track that ribbons all over these fields and around. And I thought, my gosh, I could get my YSR 50 out there and run it around. And now that's all changed. You can still see the path, but it's all overgrown a little bit. But I kind of thought of you. I was like, man, I could have had a road course there, but this thing was pretty narrow. Like I said, it was about as narrow as a cart path. Is yours like a fairly wide track? And do you have like runoff and gravel and everything?
No, so our track is because my dad actually raced go-karts as well. So it's probably, I don't know, maybe 15 feet long, 15, 20 feet, wide. And I mean, you could say it's pretty narrow, especially compared to like the tracks that we race in, in MotoAmerica, but it's like a pretty good go kart track.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's really cool. I mean, there's tons of elevation change and kind of, a bit of everything. But yeah, I mean, I've had my teammate now, Brandon Posh, come out and ride it with me. Still haven't gotten Gus Rodeo out. I've talked to him before. But the thing about, the bigger bikes on kind of the smaller tracks is that it tears up the pavement a little bit. That's the only thing, I know if he came out with, him and Brandon with the 450s, I think that would be a bit of a beating to the track, but it's good. I like it a lot. It's pretty fun, especially on the 125, is what my supermoto is. It's really fun.
Okay, so I can't even remember this off the top of my head, but at 14 years old, what grade are you in?
Ninth, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So you go to high school, first year of high school.
Yep.
You're not homeschooled though, are you? Or do you actually go to school?
I go online school.
Oh, okay. That works out. So
yeah.
Question. Go ahead.
Really? Yeah.
So the kids that in your neighborhood or whatever, are they aware of what you do and how successful you are?
Yeah. So when I went into school, this is actually my first full year doing online school. Aside from everything that happened with COVID, but when I was going to my middle school, we had this one Christmas assembly, and it was when one of my videos on YouTube came out for kind of like a pitch thing, and it was really cool. My whole school was so supportive of it, and some of my teachers still email me about my racing, my if they could get some like shirts and hats and things. But yeah, they played one of my videos at the Christmas assembly, which was pretty cool. So, a lot of people in my area that go to my school kind of know what I do. Obviously not to the extent that a lot of other people do, but it's pretty cool.
Okay, so I got to ask you this too. Basically, you're a girl in a boys' sport. Does that mean, most of your friends, do you find they're probably boys, right? I mean, from our paddock, et cetera, other junior cup racers?
Yeah, most of them are. I mean, obviously, girls here and there that race or hang out in the paddock, but a majority of my friends are racers too.
Yeah, Kayla, so Paul talked about you being online and all that, and we've seen that quite a bit. And I even told you that it's interesting that when I was with Yamaha, I remember when Garrett Gerloff was being homeschooled, and that his education was so important really to him and to his family. And it's interesting that, he's 31 and so are you. And I know that you visited him when you were over in Europe doing that R3 European Cup stuff. So, this wasn't what I was going to ask you, but now that I mention it, why are you number 31?
So when I was younger, kind of how I got into it, but when my dad raced, he always used the number 31, and it's always been a number that I've liked a lot. So that's kind of the big motive behind why I chose the number 31. But like I said, I like the number a lot too. And it kind of makes it easier if, you ever do win it, just kind of put the 3 aside.
Yeah, I mean that's really good, and that's actually what Garrett used to say too. Is like just remove that 3 and you're good to go there. So, but I want to talk again about your school, and this is kind of for personal reasons because my wife is an 8th grade language arts teacher, and she I've been around that age group of kids a lot. I've gone into her classroom and talked to kids, and you're a year older than that, but now that you're doing online because you sort of have to a little bit. Compare that to being in school because it's tough. I mean, I know these kids that are homeschooled, you kind of lose touch with your age group a little bit. And I know you get it in the paddock with racing and everything, but it's pretty important to have peers your age that you hang around with. So do you, at this point, I guess you're in 9th grade and you're older now, so you kind of are becoming a young lady and are pretty maybe not set in your ways, but you know what you're up doing. You don't maybe need to have, well, you certainly don't have to have play dates like younger kids do to get them together. But how do you deal with the fact that you're not in a classroom anymore? What's that transition been like?
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, this is my first full year online, and obviously the really good things about it, like if I'm racing one weekend, I can, do my work the next week or do it the week prior so that, it's a bit asynchronous. So I can, kind of have a bit of flexibility. But obviously being in a classroom and being involved is definitely a lot easier in some aspects. But going with, the people in my grade, when I went to school, I had a bunch of friends that, did either motocross and things like that. And then some of just my personal friends, but yeah, I still talk to a lot of them. Obviously it's been hard and it's hard to plan things with my schedule because we're just hopping around a lot. But yeah, I still get to see my friends every once in a while.
That's good. And the other thing I want to mention too regarding your age is, so every year at the end of the year, my wife's grade, they actually take a field trip, and wouldn't you know it, they go to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And it's funny because I know you as being from Biglerville, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, and then I see you mentioned as Gettysburg. I've been to Gettysburg a few times. I love that area. I don't remember Biglerville, but what is it? Right? Is it right there? I mean, why don't I know that town?
It's like right next to Gettysburg. I technically, like, my dad's house is technically right on like the border of Biglerville and Gettysburg. So it's like, I will just say Biglerville because it's kind of right there. But yeah, I've always gone to school in Gettysburg and like the Gettysburg area school district. But yeah, I mean, I like it here a lot. That's obviously my dad was going to go to a place where it was pretty quiet, and we had a bit of space so that we wouldn't have to worry about neighbors. Which is something that he had to worry about before when he would ride his dirt bikes in the fields at our old house,
Yeah. So I grew up in New York State, and obviously when I was a kid, we would go to Gettysburg. And I remember I probably went to Gettysburg when I was your age. And I have to admit openly that I have much more of a love for history as I've gotten older than I maybe did then. I appreciated it a little bit, but it was like a subject you had to study in school. So maybe because it was something in school, I didn't really embrace it quite as much. But I mean, you were literally there. And when I've been in Gettysburg before, and you'd ask somebody like, where is the battlefield? And they would go, well, you're standing on the battlefield. The entire town of Gettysburg was a battlefield. And do you have a pretty good understanding of the history of Gettysburg? And it's a national treasure, obviously, that area and what that meant to this country. Do you have a grasp of that, what that's all about?
Yeah, I mean, obviously in our schools, that's, kind of the biggest thing. Our school is literally right next to the battlefield. So we can walk, 30 feet and be on the battlefield from our school, or from at least our middle school. And, we're, right where my mom lives too. We live like right in town. So it's really cool to be surrounded by the history. But like I said, with school, that's kind of the focus on a lot of, social studies and history lessons is, kind of through the details of the battle and where things happened. And it's really cool because we can actually physically go to these places because we're, in the middle of it. But yeah, it's cool. I think it's really cool. I used to go to a lot of like the museums in town and the historic places a lot when I was younger, and we just kind of hang out there and do the tours, but it's pretty cool.
Hey, I just got to jump on one thing real quick before Paul has a question for you, Kayla, but I got to bring this up. And I think this is something that might resonate with you at your age, but it scares me a little. But I will tell you this. We talk about a fair amount that there are a lot of ghosts in that area. I mean, it just is a known fact. I have witnessed a situation where we were at one part of the battlefield and there were some guys dressed up in Confederate uniforms down by a little round top. And we went down there and they were gone. And then we asked, are there reenactors going on? And they said, no, that's not going on. And so I don't know what I saw, but we've heard other stories in that area. I know some of the ghost stories, I'm sure. Tell us about any of that you know. Do you have any ghosts at your house?
Yeah, so basically, we walk around town, especially in the summertime. You get a lot of people around this, in town that dress up, and obviously, if they're doing tours, the guides will dress up. But you'll see a lot of people in Confederate or Union uniforms a lot, and a lot of our restaurants here too are themed that way, so people will dress up there. But yeah, I mean, I've heard a bunch of stories like that where they're like, I've seen a gray figure in the trees and the tree line. You can believe some of it. I mean, there are definitely houses here that I think obviously there's crazy stuff that has happened in our town. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, when I was younger, I thought I saw something in my dad's house, but I was also like 7, so I could have just made that up and tried to convince myself I saw something to be cool. But it's cool to hear other people's like experiences here because like I said, we live like right in the middle of it, and I've been to like a lot of the houses and like kind of places where there have been crazy things that have happened. And with history, there's all these the bloody battles of Gettysburg and stuff like that. So and I've seen some of the ghost shows too when they come to Gettysburg, and then I watch some of the stuff and it's just like I don't know how accurate that is, but whatever.
All right, let's go back to motorcycles.
Yeah, let's do it.
You ready, Sean, or not?
Yeah.
So, Kayla, you obviously have taken to motorcycle racing, and it sounds like racing of different kinds since you started in go-karts. What's your favorite part? Is it the speed? Is it competing? I think with you, it might be the brakes because you're pretty good on the brakes. But what part of it is you find the most enjoyable?
Yeah, I mean, competing is awesome. I mean, going into the season, that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to race. I wanted to get to Atlanta. And obviously when I got there, I was like, okay, well, now we're here. But, I like the adrenaline, the speed, being around people that, you can actually talk to off the track too. Just like having that racing family is really nice. And then obviously racing them all is really cool too. But there are a lot of things in motorcycle racing that I love.
Now, you've been accepted, obviously, by the other guys in the class. And I think the acceptance comes from the fact that they know how good you are and they see how good you are. Coming into our paddock and racing against the guys, has there been any issues, or is it's kind of open arms and everyone's welcomed you?
Yeah, I think to me it's been all open arms. Obviously you have the people that that kind of doubt you in the beginning, and you kind of prove yourself. But a lot of the people that I'm racing with now, I've raced with for a really long time, and I grew up racing with. So it's cool to race, with people like that again. But it depends on who you go up to. But I feel like I've kind of earned my spot here, and I've proven that I'm here to stay.
Kayla, I got to ask you this question. So we have a thing called, it's the Discord server, and it's the motorcycle Discord server. And we've been promoting that a lot, but it's a community of people that just kind of get together and, have conversations about everything from racing to motorcycles of any kind, to show us your bike, to if you have a question. And one of the things that's happened recently is, we've had some people, you never know who these people are. You just see their kind of their handle or whatever. And I didn't realize there was one person I was talking to who he kind of let it be known that he was in high school, because he said, "Hey, I'll get back to you after third period." And I knew what he was talking about. So he was asking me questions like which bike to buy, and all these kind of things, and even like, how do you know when to shift? And I'm like, some of that stuff, it's hard for me to explain, because a lot of it's by feel, or once you ride, you just do it. But I have to ask you, it's something I've always wondered, because I've been riding motorcycles my whole life, and I didn't really race. I did some track, I've done track days and stuff, but you're so young still. The mechanics of riding a motorcycle, the gears, the usage of the clutch, the throttle, is that become second nature to you? And do you guys, even in Junior Cup, I never see anybody loop out on the starting line or stall it or anything like that. I mean, you're very talented and very adept at what you do with the mechanics of riding a motorcycle, even at your young age. Why is that? I mean, do you ever think about those things when you're riding?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it before. It's, when I just kind of sat down and thought about my riding, it's kind of like, I'm doing all these things at once and I'm not really thinking about it, which is kind of crazy to think about, because that's something that I learned. That's, the basics I learned when I was really young. And now it just comes as, you get on the bike and you go, and you try to go fast. But yeah, I mean, talking about the Discord server too, I've actually popped in there a few times and read some of the chats, but yeah, I mean, it's
what's your handle, Kayla? Do you have one?
It's just my name.
I don't for you. Okay.
I haven't really said too much on there. I kind of just observe and see what other people are saying. I've seen Trevor Standish in there a few times.
Yes.
But yeah, I just I pop in every once in a while, check what people are saying, see the latest on the Discord. So
yeah. And there's one guy, Steven 789. He raced in Twins Cup at Road Atlanta, and there were a few other people that came to watch him race, and we all sort of got together. We should have grabbed you too, but we had a little bit of because some of these people, you don't know what they look like even, and it's always that case that some of the people I met, it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that person would look like that, or they'd be that age or whatever. And we had a good time, but they spent a little bit of time around Steven Smith, who is this Twins Cup rider. So that's cool that you're in there too. But I mean, it's just interesting. Do you think, I mean, I know when my son was younger, they always said if you wanted to learn a language or anything, it's better to learn it when you're young, because you pick up stuff a lot better than you do when you're older. Do you think that's the case with motorcycles too? I mean, you learned how to ride at such a young age that you kind of got that down, and it's not even something now that it's second nature to you, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely you learn so much more, especially from a young age, and kind of absorb it all when you're younger. So, I mean, I think that my comfortableness on the bike, I think that's a word, on the bike is definitely thanks to starting younger and just having that feeling, like I talked about before, of being one with the bike comes with comfort. And that's probably the biggest thing for a rider. And to be able to feel that connection to where as soon as you sit on the bike, you're ready to go.
What kind of training do you do at your age? Are you trying to work on your core or strength? Are you trying to do things that just up your heart rate? And, what exactly are you working on? Because you're still obviously growing.
And there are a lot of things that I do to kind of just get me where I want to be. Obviously, with being a girl, it's a lot different too. You have to kind of work around a few things and work on certain muscles. But I'm chipping away at it. we're not going to give away too much because we disclosed information. And no, but I'm happy where I'm at right now. Hopefully we can keep improving our fitness. I think there was definitely a big step from Barber to Atlanta that we made in my overall fitness. So we're going to keep chipping away at it. Hopefully it pays off very well.
Well, it seems like it's showing. I mean, you definitely put yourself in the window, so to speak, last year and certainly at Barber. But this year, I mean, I know this was the first weekend for Junior Cup, but you did real well. I do want to ask you a question about something that I can't remember with everything that went on over the weekend. I honestly can't remember the situation, but you were DQ'd in the second qualifying session. What happened?
Yeah. When I asked my dad about it, when I asked for, what does he think about it? He's like, oh, I was just stupid. I made a stupid mistake. But yeah, I mean, we went out in Q2. I'll just go over the session first because that was kind of the biggest thing is, all last year, like I said, I was working on my qualifying and I could not find a group. I was always by myself. And I was always too nice kind of in my qualifying, never really put myself in a good position. And I finally did it. I finally put myself in a good position. We were sat in P3. We come in. We're all happy. We're like, oh, this is going to be so cool. We're going to be front row. And then, nope, you're 1 pound underweight. Oh, and I was like, oh, man. So, our morning session was at 8 a.m. So no one really – for me personally, I didn't think that everyone was going to go faster, but we all ended up going a lot faster, which actually kind of got me worried since, being underweight, our time got DQ'd. I was worried that my qualifying position from the day prior wouldn't be good enough to get me at least on the front three rows. And we got lucky. We, stayed in seventh place. Which wasn't, that's still my best qualifying that I've had. And last year, my best qualifying was 10th. So it's still an improvement. Not obviously what we wanted, but it was good. But, just 1 pound underweight, got DQ'd, not, wasn't super happy about it, but I knew that, we had more for the race and we could stay in that pack.
Yeah, and I'm glad you reminded me. That's right. Okay, now this is something I definitely wanted to ask you because, yes, you were underweight and not by much. We heard it was, Jason, our timing and scoring guy, said you just should have had one more pancake at breakfast. Not that you had pancakes for breakfast, but that was the point he wanted to make. But I talked to Chris Oliveira about it, who is Alexis Oliveira's dad, and Alexis is Super Lex. She's raced in Junior Cup in the past. Now she's transitioned to doing videos and doing a very good job with that. But he told me, and tell me if this is the case with you, Kayla. He said in a given day, she would actually, her weight would fluctuate like 15 pounds in a day. Is that crazy?
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, I'm relaxed. I've known, Lexi and Chris for a while because we used to race at the Herons together. And, I could see that my weight fluctuates a bit. 15 pounds is crazy to me. That's a lot. That's like, that's a lot of weights. If if you're
it is
15 pounds, a lot of weights that you got to put in the bike. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot. I think for me, it's maybe like 5 pounds. It'll fluctuate over a weekend and that's like a stretch, but yeah, I mean, it happens a lot. And especially since you're burning so many calories on the bike and our sessions are fairly long. It's, and you're also running around throughout the day. You definitely burn a lot of calories and then to recover, and take the time to kind of build that muscle back again. It's, it fluctuates a bit.
You said something about when you qualify that I wanted people to understand a little bit. You had talked about getting with a group. What does that mean?
Yeah. So especially in classes that, you have less power to, a super bike, having a draft and having a tow is so important because it's so hard on tracks where you have long straightaways to do a time by yourself and not lose anything on a straightaway. And obviously having draft, you're, decreasing the amount of wind that you have coming towards you. And, obviously the more wind, the slower you'll go on straightaway. So to be able to be in a group and to catch that draft makes a huge difference, especially at a track like Road Atlanta, where you have that really long back straightaway. It makes such a big difference. And, with Junior Cup too, all our times are so close. So, a few tenths here and there is a lot. And if you're able to get that with a tow, then it's very, very much worth it.
Sean, you need to watch Moto3 qualifying from Europe, because I mean, they sit around and wait. I mean, it's ridiculous, some of the stuff. I know you've seen it, Kayla, but I mean, they'll sit around and ride offline and ride online, and they're barely moving, waiting for that pack to come through. But they've really started to clamp down on that, because it's actually gets to the point where it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, there are a few people that I know of in Junior Cup that do that a lot. And if it's necessary, it's necessary. I mean, obviously don't do it in line. That's the worst thing that you can do. But I see it a lot in Moto3, like you said. A lot of people did it in Blue Crew. I mean, that was pretty bad. They were, sitting online. I remember a few times at Aston where I did get in that big group once, and that was probably the most sketchy qualifying session I've ever been in. But yeah, I mean, it's so important, especially on the little bikes, to have that tow. And, without it, it's just so difficult to have a good qualifying.
We're running out of time here a little bit, Kayla, but I do want to mention a couple of things. So yeah, you touched on the R3 Cup last year. So you raced in the Yamaha R3 European Cup. I don't know what order that's actually in, the Blue Crew Cup, on a Yamaha R3 in a spec class with riders all over the world. And it's been interesting to see this year, like for instance, that series raced the same time we were at Road Atlanta, and I think the next time they race is when we're going to be at VIR. They do it in coordination with World Superbike, and just from following Garrett Gerloff, we kind of know. So you're not doing that cup this year, but it was interesting last year how it was like this massive horde of all these riders that got together. And Junior Cup is kind of like that this year too, with them being all Kawasaki 400s. But that Junior Cup, that R3 Cup that you did last year, how did that help you? I'm sure the extra seat time and track time helped, but being in those groups, it's got to help you going forward for this year and even beyond in your career. Tell us about what you got out of that last year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, it was my first year ever racing professionally, and I hadn't even been out of the country yet. And also not even been to half of the MotoAmerica tracks. And, it's kind of crazy getting that call from the American racing guys and them getting me over there and doing that cup. It was kind of crazy and definitely like a surreal experience. But, the way they ride over there is so much different, and especially, different from what I had seen in, club racing. It was just different. And, racing in these huge groups of these like super aggressive guys, and, everyone has the hunger to win. And it's, not that people here don't have that, but it's just all these teenagers that are just ready to battle and, bump and hit and just ready to go. And it was really cool. And I think that a lot of the stuff that I learned over there, I'm kind of absorbing into my riding now. And it's not as much of a shock now. It's kind of just like, okay, I see what they're doing, and I'm going to try to apply this now to my riding. And like I said, I had the whole off season to kind of focus on that and focus on what they were doing differently. Same for the kids here in MotoAmerica, focus on what they were doing differently and kind of try to apply that to myself. But, that whole experience was so cool, racing on some of those tracks with the World Superbike guys. It was just a really cool experience.
The funny thing is too, that last year you raced with BartCon Racing, this year with your Altus Motorsports. So as you mentioned, you've got Brandon Posh is your teammate, as well as Jarrett Nassani, Justin Jones. And that's obviously a really good team. They've won the past 2 Stock 1000 championships, and they've got a good footprint in the paddock. So it's cool that you're with those guys. But your former team, so this year, Colin Barton from Bartcon Racing has got Levi Batty from Belgium racing in Junior Cup, and he was on track with you this weekend, and he put it on the pole in his first race in the US, and lo and behold, he was an R3 Cup racer last year. So you know Levi pretty well, huh?
Yeah. I mean, last year it was pretty cool, racing with Levi. Both of us were kind of in our lone country and kind of representing ourselves. And, I talked to him a bit over there. We had some pretty cool races. It was actually pretty cool to hear him come over here because he, me and him always qualify together, within the same like 3 to 5 positions. And we would race together a lot and have some pretty good battles. And to hear him coming over here was a really cool thing. And obviously racing with him again at Atlanta and us trading some passes together was a pretty cool thing.
So I got one more question for you, and I wanted to ask you about this because I talked to your dad a little bit. So this past weekend, you got 4th on Saturday, but you seem to be in a group. You talk about in qualifying being in a group. Well, sometimes you don't really want to be in a group when you're in a race because you can get shuffled back in the order pretty quick. And you were going to podium, or it looked like you were absolutely going to be there in that Saturday race. But I was surprised. I talked to your dad, and he readily gave me information that there was something not quite right with the bike, and it seemed like it made a difference on Sunday. Can you tell us what that was, Kayla?
Yeah, well, in Saturday's race, we stayed to the front of the group. I noticed that at the end of the straightaways, our gearing was not exactly perfect, and they were just kind of swallowing me up, even in draft at the end of the straightaways, which, going into 10A, I was decent on the brakes, but if I'm too far back, it's just so hard to stick that front wheel in there and, without, running into someone. So, like I said, I tried to stay to the front of that group. Those last few laps, there were a few passes that were made that kind of broke the 2 groups apart. I was able to kind of catch them on the last lap, but obviously it was a bit too far out of my striking distance to get all of them into 10A. But yeah, I mean, we made a gearing change for race 2, and it definitely worked out.
All right, Sean, you done there, buddy?
Yeah, that was the big thing, is the fact that, I mean, listen to Kayla sitting here talking about how, she needs a gearing change in her bike. And I mean, I've written stories about explaining what gearing is with the teeth on the sprocket and all that kind of stuff. And here she completely understands it. And by the way, she will be 15 on June 24th. And Kayla, one thing that's not lost on me that you and I, even though I don't really believe in this that much, but I have to point out, you and I are born under the same zodiac sign. We're both Cancers. And so we're both emotional. We both are very loving, and we both love to be home. Is that true about you?
I'm probably emotional because of my mom. That's probably where I get that. And I mean, I don't do the astrology stuff. I know a lot of people that are my age, especially girls that do that. I'm not as much into that, but yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit emotional, but like in a good way, not as much bad way. But I do like being outside. That's the only difference.
Okay. Fair enough. All right,
Kayla, it's been a pleasure having you. Everyone feels badly about how Sunday turned out, and I was ready to get ready to say that you were the first female racer to ever win one of our Junior Cup races. So it was difficult to not get to be able to say that, but I can honestly say that that's going to happen this year. So yeah. It'll all be water under the bridge when that does happen. And I also have a feeling, I think your career will go beyond Junior Cup, and maybe one day we'll even get to call you the first female racer to win one of our Superbike races, which would be outstanding. But you're on a trajectory to move up and go through the different classes until going as far as you want to go, I guess. So I appreciate having you on the show. I appreciate how intelligent and smart you are and how well spoken. And I think you're a positive, very positive influence on our sport. And I look forward to working with you for many years to come. But thanks for joining us. And Sean, thank you for, getting her to speak about the history of her hometown and goats and whatever else we discussed. But I enjoyed it and it was fun. And I look forward to seeing you guys both in a few more weeks.
Sounds great.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Kayla, thanks, Paul.
Bye-bye.